Hello and welcome to With Winning in Mind podcast. I'm your host, Troy Bassham, and today I'm joined with the founder and creator and the master of the mental game, Lanny Bassham himself, and he is going to help us with understanding the secret to actually winning. So you're going to give us the secret sauce today.
Yeah, don't tell anybody.
We won't.
I'm going to give you the secret. I'm going to tell you what everybody wants to know. Some of the things that winners do that people who want to win seem to either they don't know to do this, or they don't know how to do it, or more importantly, they think they are doing it and they're not. So we're going to talk about some of those issues today. I think where it really all starts is that if you're in a sport that has a proactive element, sports like golf or archery or shotgun shooting or anything that is duplicable, like you're doing it over and over and over again. The big factor in your success is going to be consistency. If you can have so just take golf for example, if you can have a consistent swing or a consistent putting stroke, you have more control over the ball, and by having more control over the ball, you have a greater probability of scoring. And scoring is going to be the difference in winning. Well, there are a lot of elements that are part of consistency, and one of those elements, the area that we're going to talk about, is mental consistency. If you're not mentally consistent, you can't be technically consistent. And so I can tell you today, what the secret to winning is, and we'll break it down a little bit, but just knowing what to do is only part of it. You need to know what to do, and then you need to know how to do it, and then you need to know why you're doing it. Well, the top people know what to do, they know how to do it, and they know why they're doing it, and they're able to do it every single time. So we'll try to go over what the essential elements of winning is. But in the beginning, what we're looking for is finding a way to have a consistent mental process and sync it up with a consistent routine. Routine is what you physically do. The mental process is what you're thinking about while you physically do it. Now, most of you guys that may play golf or do some things, you go take a lesson from a swing coach or someone to help you with your swing. Try to get your swing as consistent as you can get it. How many times have you had a lesson from a coach, and they've told you, here's what you need to do, which is your routine, but how many times have they said, here's what you need to think about while you do it?
Well, they don't. And that's probably why sports like golf, they're really good about being mentally consistent, about being mentally inconsistent. And it's because they're focused more on what the result may or may not be, or their opponents, or the leaderboard. We see this in a lot of shooting sports, same thing. I'm focusing more on the results and what others are doing rather than focusing on something that's repeatable. So you're saying it's just not good enough to be able to repeat the physical aspect of it. I have to also be able to repeat a mental aspect of it.
Well, you can't repeat a physical action if you have a different mental thought, because anytime you change what you picture, your body responds to that. So if you have a helpful thought, and you can define the things that are most helpful, if you're repeating those helpful thoughts all the time, you have a chance to have mental consistency and technical consistency. But if you change the thought picture, and if you go from helpful to harmful, your body responds and you get a bad shot. So this is why it's so important to have definition of what you're thinking about while you're actually performing. I mean, if you can spend a lot of time trying to figure out how to have consistency of form, and I think that's what everybody does. Then, by the way, that's correct. You should go to the best instructor you can afford, get the best equipment that you can afford, and train until you have a consistent form. But what I'm telling you is that if you change what you picture while you're executing your routine, you pay a price, and there are certain helpful thoughts and certain harmful thoughts, and what the secret to winning really is to define the most helpful thoughts that you can have that gives you the best result.
But that's step one, is defining what to think about, and you're saying that it needs to be synced up with what you're physically doing.
Yes, absolutely.
Can you give an example right quick?
Well, let's talk about golf for a minute. I believe that, and we teach, that everything we do in life has three phases to it. It has an anticipation, what you're thinking about before the shot. Say the task is a shot. The anticipation phase, what you're thinking about before the shot. The action phase is what you're thinking about during the shot. The reinforcement phase would be what you're thinking about after the shot. All right, so let's talk about the anticipation phase first. So there are a lot of steps that we teach that a player should go through in the anticipation phase. We define them as having 6 steps. There's 3 steps in what we call preload, and there's 3 steps in what we call mental program. And the 3 steps in preload are, the first step is a player's going to have to develop a strategy for this shot. There's a lot of information that they've got to process. I mean, the lie of the ball, the distance to the target, what the target is, the weather, what club they're going to use, how they're going to hit the shot. So that's the strategy, and people do that, and it's appropriate to think about the strategy. The next thing, they're probably going to take a practice swing, and we're probably going to try to feel what does that feel like, and try to program that, and that's appropriate. They're probably, what they should do that most of them don't do is they should commit to the strategy that they had. They should commit to their ability to hit the shot, and all of that is done in what we call preload. Now they're ready to execute what we call mental program. And at the mental program, there's a point of initiation that starts the mental program, and then a point of alignment where they address the ball. And the last thing they're going to think about is the point of focus is what they're going to think about right over the ball, right before takeaway occurs. Now, if they can define the optimum thing, what works best for them, and stick to it and sync it up with their routine, they can have a chance at mental consistency in the anticipation phase. But that's not the whole enchilada here, okay?
But that sounds like a big part. It's a big ingredient of the enchilada.
Yeah, it's such a big ingredient. You wrote a whole book about it.
So when we look at, when you look at defining, the example you're giving is the anticipation phase, which we do break it down into 3 steps. And it's basically going from I'm doing a lot of thinking to I want to just do the task itself without thinking. Golf is easy because the swing in the action phase is less than a couple seconds. It's second half, something like that. Mm-hmm. So it's very easy, similar to your sport, rifle shooting. The action phase is literally nanoseconds.
The action phase in rifle shooting starts when you pull the trigger and ends when the bullet exits the barrel. You don't have time to think about anything there. Yeah. And I don't think players, at least the high quality players, I don't think they think during the swing or think during the putt. It's such a short period of time. But what they think about before and after the putt is critical to their success.
But defining a specific thing to think about in a specific order that's tied to the physical is how you generate consistency.
That's right.
And so most people struggle with that because because what you're suggesting and you're defining what process thinking is. Most athletes that we work with At least when they come to us, it's all result oriented. They're focusing on what the shot may or may not be, rather than, okay, what do I need to do? And I just do that and trust it's going to work. So if we define it, then I guess it goes into the second part, which would be you need to master what you've chosen. Is that how you gain consistency in competition?
Well, here's what the we call them the elite. Elite 5%. 95% of winning is accomplished by 5% of the performers. Okay, so the top 5%ers, and we've worked with a lot of top 5%ers, PGA Tour players, number one skeet shooter in the world runs our program, number one archer in the world runs our program. We have a lot of experience with working with elite performers. And what they do that's different is that they start out by having a definition of what they're going to think about at each step of the routine. In addition to that, the second step after definition is mastery. Well, how do you know if you've achieved mastery? Well, we define mastery as when you can't do it wrong. So you got to do it enough to where you can't do it wrong. You just it becomes like you to do it. Okay, that introduces another element of what we teach, is that you have to have a self-image that is like me to do this. And how is that self-image integrated into these three phases of the task? That comes and how you respond to the shot that you just hit. So we've been talking about the anticipation phase, and we'll go back and address some more things about the anticipation phase. But once you hit the shot, you're in the reinforcement phase of the task. So in the reinforcement phase, your self-image is going to be impacted by where the ball went. So if you hit a good shot, what imprints in your self-image is it's like me to hit a good shot. If you hit a bad shot, what imprints in the self-image is like me to hit a bad shot. Now, if you beat yourself up, you have more negative imprinting, and your self-image is going to go like this. The more negative imprints you have, your self-image shrinks. The more positive imprints you have, your self-image grows. So the self-image is a critical part of whether or not you're going to be a champion or not. As a matter of fact, if you look at the top 5% to do 95% of the winning, you can't tell the difference between the top 5% that win 95% of the time and the second 5% that only win 5% of the time. You can't tell any difference between the two. They look the same, they train the same, they have the same coaches, they have the same passion for the sport. The only big difference is you can't observe any difference, but I'll tell you what the difference is. The top 5% have a self-image that's different from the second 5%. The top 5% are doing things that are different from the second 5%.
But you can't see it.
You can't see it. But I'll tell you, one of the things that they're doing that's the key to consistency is that consistency is a 3-step process. Step number 1, carefully choose your primary. What are you going to think about? Refine it, get it the best that you can possibly make it. Your best swing, the best mental process, all that. The second is to master what you've chosen. Do it so often to where it's like you to do it. You can't do it wrong. And then you can get to what the top 5% that do. They are not trying to win. They are not trying to put the ball in the hole. They are not trying to beat their competitors. They are not trying for outcome. They don't try to win. They trust that they will. There's a big difference between trying and trusting. Somebody who's trying tends to over-try or to force it, But somebody that's trusting tends to have so much confidence in their ability that they allow it to happen. They allow their subconscious to do its job instead of getting in the way. And the self-image and how you handle what you've just done. The top 5% tend to do things like this. When they hit a good shot, they tend to think about that good shot again. When they hit a bad shot, they tend to think this way: well, what did I need to do? In other words, they're thinking about the solution, not the problem. And most of us that are on in that category, when we make a mistake, we tend to think about the mistake and not about the correction. And the top 5% don't go there because they're trying to protect their self-image. So they're thinking about what they want to have happen. They're thinking about the correction and when things don't go right. And that's the reason they win. It's because their self-image gets built and protected. And so it's not just knowing what to think about, but it's also knowing how to respond to what just happened. And that's the real secret to winning, is being able to have a mental system, which is what we teach at Mental Management Systems. We teach people how to develop a mental system that they can use to be able to achieve that.
Yeah, because if you're truly trusting what you've mastered, there's no way result can get in the way. There's no way doubt can get in the way. There's no way of second guessing yourself can get in the way. Where a lot of people, when it comes to crunch time, have a chance to win, and they know they have a chance to win, all of a sudden they get in their own way. You know, how is it that a player can play really good all the way up until the last 2 holes and all of a sudden give up 2 or 3 strokes? The top 5% don't do that, is what you're saying.
Well, they start thinking about outcome. Here's the problem with thinking about outcome: is when you think about outcome is a variable. It's never constant. And in a sport like golf, or in any sport, anytime you can make something a constant, you have a huge improvement on your ability to have a consistent score or a winning score. So you can actually make a mental process. A mental process is a constant. Now a portion of it is a variable, like the what we call the preload. The strategy portion of a golf shot is going to change because the shot changes. But once a person has the strategy figured out, and I'm going to use this club, I'm going to hit it this way, and so forth. Once that happens, everything else could be uniform. It could be the same. And you're thinking about the mental process. Thinking about a mental process is a constant. Thinking about outcome is a variable. So if you are deciding how or the amount of mental effort that you're going to give this shot based on score, your mental game is a function of a variable. You can never be mentally consistent when you do that.
The main secret is that you need to be mentally consistent in competition. And to be mentally consistent, you have to first carefully, I like the way you use carefully choose your primary way to think, primary way to do the task you're going to do that. Second, master what you've chosen. And the third one is the one that the top 5% do really well. They trust what they've mastered. So if you like this topic and you want to hear more, please subscribe, like, and put a little comment section in WordPod.